meet Deborah. She's a very experienced producer, and there's a lot of buzz about her production company, Moon Productions. It's an animation company that produces commercials and animation, and to date pretty much on a work-for-hire basis for third-party IP owners. But she's been making a living doing it, and she has a very good reputation. She's been winning awards, and recently she produced a 30-minute special, Christmas family special for the BBC. There's a buzz going. Andrew has met Deborah. And is it love? Or I'd like to quote Jackie Edwards, is this, going back to the Spice Girls, my beloved Spice Girls, is two going to become one, working together towards one production? Andrew, can you tell us a bit about your idea and how you ended up working with Deborah, or what are your early stages discussions?
Absolutely. So being the talented animator that I am, I came up with a really great idea of a roller skate that has got lots of friends, and they roll around this lovely little world, and I think it's going to be bigger than Bob the Builder. I'm absolutely determined there's going to be licensing opportunities, books, the whole works. The world will be at my feet, if only I can get it into production. And the problem is, I haven't done this before. I've made the characters, I've drawn them, I've worked on other people's shows, but this whole thing of actually making the show and financing it is new to me. So I went to the Children's Media Conference in Sheffield, which is a wonderful place to go. And
July 5th to 7th this year.
Yeah, tickets on sale now. I was looking for someone who has got more experience and skills, someone who can help me develop this project and take it to the next level, and who's got the contacts and the understanding of the industry that I lack. So that was the criteria that I was looking for, and I've met 3 or 4 different people, and I decided that Deborah and her company are just the perfect partner for me. If only we can just make sure we get the deal right, because it's my idea, and it's a huge opportunity, and everyone's going to be wanting to have a piece of this. And I need to make sure that I get ripped off.
Deborah, what are your initial thoughts of working with Andrew?
Well, it's appealing to me to work with Andrew. I've been running my company for quite a few years. We've got quite a healthy turnover. We've always been a work-for-hire business, but recently on this BBC animated half-hour special, we put some proper skin in the game. We discounted our fees, we deferred, we put sweat equity in, and we're on a back-end position. We're having a bit of a moment in the sun. We're quite hot, there's quite a bit of buzz about us, and I know for the long-term growth and development of my company, I need to be in the IP business. Slightly nervous about that because that's going to involve risk for me and my partners, but equally I can see that I need to have a seat at that table and a slice of that pie. Andrew is appealing to me. He's young, he's talented. I'm pleased that he's come to me. He's been working for a bigger animation company. He feels that there is a dialogue that we can have, because I am proactively looking for these kind of properties that can work across a number of platforms where I can get in at the ground level. I want to do a deal with Andy, but not at any cost.
Well, the general advice will always be that you get in writing what your deal terms are. So let's try and structure the deal terms, or let's get the deal terms in play. And the first point is, what's going to be the structure of your relationship? If that's not too personal.
Well, indeed. From my perspective, I want something that feels fair. I want to know where I stand. I want to know, what my position is, and I want to feel protected.
And from my position, I also want Andy to feel all those things. But by the same token, I want to stay in control, and I need Andrew to accept that he is going to have to surrender some controls in order for this to work. So we need to find a structure that gives Andrew the comfort that he needs, and it gives me the flexibility that I need to get the show into production.
So we might do a contractual structure, or we might form a joint venture together, or there might be something that's a kind of hybrid between the two. So that's something we'll have to work out as we go along.
Or when you go to financing,
Indeed.
the structure of the financing might dictate a different corporate structure. So be flexible. Rights ownership. Now you have to share and care.
Yeah.
What is the What's the percentage split you're looking at? We're looking at ownership, which in our world will be copyright.
Absolutely. So to start with, this is my project. It's an original idea. It's an original IP. I own the rights to this show. But the intention is we're going to be working together going forwards, and Deborah's going to be doing some work on my project, which means technically some of that IP will already be hers. So I want to make sure that I retain as much as I can, because I want to retain some level of control over what happens next.
And I'm happy for Andrew to have a rights ownership share, but I have to have the majority share because I need to be able to make decisions if I'm going to invest in this project. Yes, it's Andrew's intellectual property. It's not as valuable as Andrew thinks it is at this particular moment in time. I'm sorry to break it to you. It needs quite a lot of additional development work. It needs money spending on it. And if I'm going to invest my time, resources and money, I need to have assurances for me and my partners that we have the majority share of this property.
Andrew, have you 100% created this IP today? Is there anybody else that has helped you with this?
Well, you know, I take the credit for all of the work, but you know, there were a couple of people who kind of maybe helped come up with some of those ideas, but you know, it doesn't matter because you know I came up with it. But luckily, I did have a really good business affairs client who happened to say that I need to make sure I have contracts and everyone gets bought out. So yes, we're okay on the rights.
It's good for you,
Reassuring
Deborah.
to hear.
Okay, the term. How long are you going to work together on this co-development?
Well, from my perspective, you know, I don't want to jump into marriage straight away. Maybe I need to date for a bit first. You know, maybe we need to see how it goes. So, you know, maybe I need to keep my options open in case I get a better offer.
Well, you are very welcome to do that, but then it obviously is going to change what I can offer you, Andrew. You know, we could enter into an arrangement where I paid you an option fee for your intellectual property, which would be low. And I would have 12 months or 18 months with an option to renew, and you could be involved in a light consultancy capacity. And that is our kind of casual dating. You can see other people, I don't mind. Except you won't see other people during that initial term when I've got your exclusive rights. or we can, you know, we can get serious straight away.
Yeah.
We can jump into a marriage together and both really try and make this work. And I think that's going to be the better way because, as I say again, my company is going to need to invest time, money and resource. And I feel that I wouldn't be taking your project forward if I didn't believe in it. And to believe in it, I have got to breathe some life into it, and I have to have my security and assurances that it's a long-term relationship. So those are your choices, really. And obviously, how heavily I prioritise that project will also be tied to the choices you make.
Absolutely.
So as you're going forward, what are each of you going to bring to this party? What are your production roles? Or, I mean, Andrew's bringing his IP, but when you actually are doing the development, the actual day-to-day work, what are your roles going to be?
Well, one of the reasons why I want to work with Deborah is that I can only do so much myself. You know, I've had the idea, I've done some initial designs, I've done a rough piece of initial animation, but I know it's not necessarily what I need to pitch, but I don't know what I need. I don't know what broadcasters are looking for. And, you know, I've written some of the stories myself, quite a good writer, but, you know, maybe we need something more. Maybe, you know, I don't know who to go to. So I'm going to bring my skills, but I'm looking for Deborah to kind of bring something extra.
I think in the development stage, we will certainly welcome all your ideas, and as an animator, we need to play to your skills, so we will consult you at every stage of the way. But I think also what's helpful in order to move the project to the next stage is for us to be able to look at it and pass it to the team, for them to kind of see if they can take it to the next level, to look at your storylines, to look at your original designs and come up with some things for you to look at with us. So in development, we don't tend to have very, very formal roles, but we will drive it forward with you involved at every stage of the way.
Do either of you or both of you, would you take an executive producer credit if subject to commissioner's approval?
Well, if we're now in production, then absolutely, you know, I would expect my company to have an executive producer on it, and corporate credit, and certainly I would want you, Andrew, to be credited for whatever role you play on the production. But that's ultimately not 100% in my hands. It depends who we go to, what the broadcaster has to say, etc.
And for me, you know, I want people to know this was my idea. That, you know, when this becomes the next global phenomenon, it was, you know, it's right here, you know, my project. And yeah, you know, I want to be working on this show, and I want to be making sure that actually, you know, I get the opportunity to grow and develop my own skills. You know, I'm looking forward to, you know, working with other people and growing my skill base so I can do more next time around.
Well, I think, yeah.
Now, who is going to pay for the development? And where are you going to find the money for the development?
Well, you know, obviously, you know, I've funded all my own work so far. You know, I've paid for the coffee, and I've kind of, you know, paid for the pen and ink, doing my designs, and all that sweat that's gone into it. So part of the reason I want to go for a development partner is I need access to someone who can afford to do that next piece of work. I don't really have the cash to do it myself.
So yes, we will pay for the next stage. There'll be quite a lot of work to be done, which we can manage in-house, and there will be some out-the-door costs. We will cost out what the development is costing, and then we would expect to recoup that through the production budget.
Now, you've already agreed on your co-ownership and copyright. What is your position on back-end share, your share of revenue that you may earn in the future?
Well, as the creator, obviously I expect that, you know, I have a fair share from, you know, for the work of my labour. There's an interesting kind of phrase that is sometimes used in the industry that, you know, I've heard people say, and, you know, it's about monkey points because you get peanuts. And actually, you know, I don't want that. I want real points. I want to make sure that if this makes £100 million, that I actually get something meaningful.
Well, firstly, I'm really pleased that you've got such realistic ideas about the kind of profit we can have to at the lower end. And secondarily, again, I also want you to benefit from the success of our joint labour. I will be able to offer you a profit share of the profits that we at Moon Productions retain. So you will have a share of our share.
Net of producer share.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, approvals. Who's going to have your joint approval on everything? And in the event you can't approve, deadlock. How they can do like the X Factor thing.
Absolutely. So you know, as the creator, you know, I feel that I have ultimately the best idea of what the show should be and how it should work. You know, I've got a feeling that roller skate needs to be purple, but you know, it just something really, you know, that's inside of me. You know, so really I think I should have the final say. You know, I can see that, you know, broadcasters might get involved, but, you know, it's my show.
Well, I completely hear you, Andrew, but you've come to us for our skill and expertise. And so I do feel that whilst we absolutely value you and want you involved every step of the way and will fully consult you at all times, we have to have final approval, which in any event will be subject to broadcaster approval.
And what happens if we don't agree? Goodness.
Well, since I've got final approval, it's just your bad luck, isn't it? No, if we don't agree, obviously, you know, we would talk through the issues very seriously, but ultimately one party does have to have final approval in order for the machine to work, and that final approval has to sit with Moon, and I can't negotiate that point.
You would consider splitting financial decisions versus creative decisions?
Given that Andrew has not produced a show before, he isn't very experienced and he's come to us specifically for our experience, then no, I wouldn't, but I would certainly invite Andrew to comment at every key stage. I would absolutely want his property to be realised in a way that reflected the original IP, because the original IP is what drew me to Andrew. So if I wanted to change the whole show, then I would have just got into bed with somebody else. So I think you can be reassured that, you know, we will consult you at every stage of the way, but we have to have final approval. But I believe that you believe that will work, otherwise we wouldn't get this far into our negotiation.
Production credit. If it goes into production, what will your production credit be?
Well, obviously I would like a creator credit and a director credit and right to credit, lead designer. You know, I could probably think of some more, but yeah, that's probably the start as well.
Well, firstly, it's very important that the credit you receive reflects the role that you've played. I think at least based on an original idea by would not be problematic. And then, as I say, a credit for the role that you play on production, which we will decide during the development period, and sorry to keep harping on this point, but subject to broadcaster approval. Ultimately, Andrew, I'd like to give you everything you want. I am your friend. However, you know, it will be the broadcaster to decide.
And will this be, the production credit be a Moon Productions? This has been a Moon Productions for
Yes.
whoever? And could Andrew possibly get a creative by? He'll get his creative by credit no matter what. Okay? Subject to approval. Now, termination, just in case this doesn't work out, or there's certain actions of breach. Andrew becomes a serial dater. You start seeing him flirting with Ollie.
Well, obviously, it's my original idea. So, you know, if this all goes south, I would like to be in a position where I can take my idea back and I can do something else with it. Maybe this relationship won't work. Maybe it's the wrong time. Maybe we both need some space. You know, in which case, actually, you know, I might need to go and do something else. So, I think while I'm committed to this development and while I would like to work with Moon Productions, I think, you know, we hope for the best and plan for the worst, and we need to agree that I can take this away if actually, you know, something happens where we're not going to work together anymore.
Right, well that doesn't seem unreasonable, however, you wouldn't be taking away what you brought through the door. And therefore we would need to structure some sort of exit provision which recognise the value that Moon had added. And I think given the reasonably extensive development we're looking at, that would be paying us back an agreed financial contribution should you get the project away, and also recognising our involvement in breathing life into it and giving us an unrestricted profit position.
Let's go on to look at your financing options. You've developed it. What would be your initial ports of calls? I assume broadcasters and other traditional, non-traditional broadcasting partners.
Yeah, so...
Now, how much do you think you'd get from them, the percentage of your production budget,
so
in a perfect world?
At this stage, I have to take my little hat off as creator and just suspend disbelief that I'm not this creative genius that you've just been listening to. So, Deborah and I have both worked on lots of productions, and you know, I think the thing about kids' productions is it is a mosaic. You have to find lots of different pieces to try and fill the puzzle, and I think a lot of times, every time you do it, there's something a little bit different. It's not necessarily the same recipe for every single time you do it. The broadcasters are undoubtedly your first piece of the puzzle and are the most important.
You're not acting now, are you?
No, well, I am actually. So genuinely, it's, you know, in the international market, generally the first question someone's going to ask you is, who's your commissioning broadcaster? Because it changes the nature of your show. A BBC show is very different from a show that might be a Cartoon Network or a Disney show. It's not just the fact that it's the same idea, it's actually the tone and the feel of the show.
Definitely.
Because they each have different audiences and different kind of expectations, and that will affect you know, what you actually produce.
Absolutely, and in turn, in order to get a decent distribution deal, which would be a simultaneous piece, but really the next piece in our jigsaw puzzle, you again need to have a broadcaster. So there are some very good distributors in the marketplace. It's quite likely that we will be able to achieve a distribution advance or a minimum guarantee, but we would do that following on from the broadcaster piece. And our goal in talking to the distributor would be to extract the maximum advance for the minimum rights. And therefore we would hope at least to have merchandising and licensing, possibly music publishing and publishing left sitting outside that deal. So with the distributors we would probably do pay and free TV globally and related SVOD, ADOG, etc. But we would be retaining sufficient rights to then get further advances from specific distributors for merchandising and licensing.
And in terms of the value chain, there is going to be more money for your project budget from broadcasters, and then as you go down, there will be less and less money. There are exceptions, of course, to this rule, but for a show that is a brand new show that has not been on air, where there is no particular profile for the brand, the broadcasters will be bringing bigger chunks of money than, for example, book publishing or music publishing or merchandising advances, unless you just get that thing that everyone thinks is amazing. So I think this morning, I think BBC and the panel were talking about roughly where they are in percentages. So up to, and I do mean up to, you know, kind of 24%, but I mean, quite often it's lower than that. So even with the other elements of finance, one broadcaster is not necessarily enough to get your project over the line. You might need several broadcasters, which then in turn affects your distribution advance because those territories are pre-sold. But those broadcasters then also affect your merchandising because some platforms are better at selling merchandise than others.
It's quite critical in our market to get a terrestrial window, which just limits you to 2 broadcasters, there's now 3. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, very quickly, can you just cover the value, the potential value of you going into, let's look at international co-production, for you financing it, very briefly.
Okay, so the joy that is co-production is essentially working with another producer or studio in another territory. The theory is that you each bring the value from your territory, and you both bring something creatively appealing. Not always the case, but that is the ideal. And the idea is that where individually you can't raise enough money in your own country to be able to finance a show, if you work together on the same idea, you can both bring that finance to that particular project. So for international co-productions, it's about maximising the value chain and being able to say, you know, either we're going to co-produce with a territory officially under the treaty, because the UK has treaties with specific countries that allow you to maximise this, or actually maybe it's just about a service deal and it's just about having a relationship where they're going to bring something because they've got a low cost of production, or they're going to put money in, or they've got a particular skill set. Do you want to talk about just domestic side of things?
Yes, a domestic co-production would be very much the sort of thing that my fictitious company Moon did. So you have a lead studio, which has come up with the IP, and then you have a studio for hire that is doing the actual animation. And I think since the tax credits, those kind of domestic co-productions have increased quite significantly. So you'll often have rights holder plus animation company. If you look at something like the Clangers, I believe that's Clangers, is Coolabye as the rights holder, and then you have McKinnon and Saunders and Factory respectively doing the puppetry and the animation. So that would be sort of fairly typical, wouldn't it? Sort of domestic co-production, whereas international, as Andrew says, either about maximising treaties in other territories as well, or it can be about getting your animation made cheaply but well in China or India, or, you know, so that's a sort of co-production / service arrangement, isn't it?
And the other thing to say is that where you have additional partners and where you're going to be paying them money to do something, or they're going to be, you know, working with you on the budget, there is also then the opportunity for them to invest in that production. So you know, you might have a deal where you have a UK producer doing a particular element of work, and they might say, okay, well, you're giving us £1 million out of your budget to do X, whatever that is. You know, we will defer some of our fee. We won't make a profit on this show. We'll just do it at cost. And for that, we get essentially a service arrangement. Actually, we get a piece of the pie. We get some profits. Now, as a studio, there is a risk to that, because it means I'm not making money on this show now, I'm gambling. So instead of making £100 now, I'm gambling that over the next 5 years I might make £500, because it might be the next big thing. And it might also tie in the work for the next series so that there's an ongoing relationship. But it's a risk, and as a studio I need to be careful that actually I'm still covering the overheads to keep the lights on. So, but the more when you co-produce, there is more opportunity immediately for those partners to to invest some of what they're actually getting out of the budget.
And I think there's a last point on co-productions, which if you have your primary domestic broadcaster and a distributor who is working with you on co-productions, there are ways to kind of make that co-production exponentially worth more to you. So if you co-produce in France, for example, then as well as being able to access their tax money and soft money, you will get a preferential deal from a French broadcaster. And that is also true of several big territories. And when you are financing an animation, there are a number of key territories and key broadcasters that as you get those on board, your project will gain momentum, because it's a bit like casting a movie and saying, well, Brad Pitt's on board, do you want to get on board? And, you know, again, a natural kind of analogy to draw there, Andrew. And so that's another reason for sort of going into other territories is to be able to access key broadcasters in those territories, which will give your finance raising efforts around the world that momentum, because in a perfect world, if you can fund from 3 or 4 or perhaps 5 key sources, that's better than 20 Azerbaijani type individual sales.
Because we've talked about this, Deborah. It becomes a bit of game of snakes and ladders. You start climbing the ladder, then someone pulls out, and you're back down trying to find the next time.